The MLS season has come to a pause. Due to the World Cup happening in the next few weeks, MLS have decided to take a break off mid-season. So they'll reconvene later in July when the teams eventually get back for like a mini pre-season and then they're ready to go again. It's the first time ever that it's happened, and it actually has sparked a debate whether they should change their season standings or not, which actually is going to be the case. From next season, they'll look to go to a more of a European schedule where they'll be playing during different times of the year, matching up to the transfer windows the same as Europe, etc., which might make them a little bit more competitive. Now, I have been watching the MLS since the start of the season, and I've been waiting for this moment to do a podcast to review it, and then maybe going forward, if it's quite successful and people want to hear it, then I'll be reviewing every week as it goes by, because I think it's such an interesting league. It's such an incredible amount of talent that play in the MLS, and I love watching it. And ever since there's been so many players that have played in the MLS, David Beckham, who's one of my absolute heroes, playing the MLS and made it, a massive game. I think even before him, making it the global game was Pele, when he played for the New York Cosmos. So there's been a litany of players. After that, you think Steven Gerrard, you think Frank Lampard, Andrea Pirlo, David Villa, even, locally to us, Jack Price when he went to Colorado Rapids, and now currently at Colorado Rapids is Rob Holding. And there's so many players that are going to the MLS. Yeah, maybe as the retirement league, but I think so many players are going to the MLS because it is an exciting league. And it is really, like, attacking talent wise, it's really exciting. Defensively, is to be questioned. The goalkeeping, definitely. But the attacking talent that's there, it makes it a really exciting league. And I think, the Premier League at the moment is very tactical. It's very defensive dominant. Teams are very up against each other and really struggle to score goals. Whereas in the MLS, it just seems that freedom to go and express yourself, to go and score loads of goals. My plea, though, to Apple TV, can you please do some kind of review for the UK fans? Some kind of review that just goes over it, maybe a talk show with some different presenters. I throw my hat in the ring. I'd happily do it to just review what's happened, because there's so many teams, there's so many games to cover. I watch MLS wrap up every single week just to get the highlights of every single game. But it can be quite hard to piece together all the stories and all the news that's happening and all the things that have happened over the week. You can't watch MLS Countdown, which is one of their shows. You can't watch it after the event. You can't watch the MLS 360 after the event. So just some kind of review show that wraps it up, yes, but in a talk show format that goes through and goes, right, this is the game that's happened. These are some of the key players. That's my plea for the UK fans that can't watch it all the time at, 1, 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock in the morning. But anyway, let's recap and review the first half of the MLS season this year. So the Eastern Conference currently is headed by Nashville. Nashville, I think they're such a funky club. They're such a cool club. Part of their ground is like all to do with the music scene and all to do with the music as being part of their culture. One of their little parts of the stand looks like a guitar pick. It's just so cool. So cool. And they are currently sitting top of the Eastern with 33 points, only conceded 11 goals in the entire season so far in 14 games. Christian Espinosa, Sam Surridge, and Mukai have been, incredible parts of their season. Inter Miami currently sit second in the Eastern Conference. You'll know Messi, you'll know Suarez, they're headed up by David Beckham's organisation and his collective group of people that run the club. Rodrigo de Paul, and they have a real rising Mexican who potentially could be in the World Cup, and that is Bertame up front. He's currently scoring goals for fun. They're not as good as Nashville at the moment this season, but who knows when it comes to those playoffs who will eventually win it. Chicago Fire, the surprise package, and New England Revolution, who currently sit in fourth. Chicago have the top goal scorer at the moment in Kuipers, who's the Belgian, who scored 13 goals this season, above Messi, who has just at this moment got 12. There's also the Philadelphia Union, who are doing terribly bad. They sit bottom of the league. They've conceded 30 goals this year. They've got 14 less than Griezmann-bound Orlando City, but bottom of the Eastern with only 7 points. Charlotte, they're headed up by Dean Smith, if you remember him, Aston Villa fans. They have Westwood playing for them. They have Tim Ream playing for them, ex-Premier League players. But they also have a departing Zaha, who has announced that he is leaving as of yesterday. He is not renewing his loan, or the club have not decided to renew his loan from Galatasaray. So he will be leaving going back to Galatasaray. But who knows where he'll end up after the World Cup. They currently sit 6th. And, the top players in the... No, actually, we'll go to the Western Conference. So, Thomas Muller's Vancouver Whitecaps. There's been a lot of debate about whether they're potentially relocating, and maybe they're moving out of Canada, or maybe they're moving somewhere else in Canada, or maybe they're moving somewhere in the US. But they're potentially going to relocate, which I think is just a crazy concept to understand, especially for European fans. Culture, fans, supporters. It's such an important part of where your team is from. And support your local team and all that. And all them Vancouvians, all those Canadians who support Vancouver Whitecaps, potentially move into a different city, it just seems mad. But they currently lead the way, and they've got 32 points alongside San Jose Earthquakes as well at 32 points. LAFC, who we thought would be right at the top of the league, just haven't hit the heights. Heung-min Son is not playing with the amount of goals I thought he would get this year. They're currently 5th at the moment. They're expected to be in the playoffs, yeah, but I just expected them to be at the top of the league. The LA Galaxy currently sit 9th. They're having a better season they did last season. Sporting Kansas City, they currently sit bottom of the Western Conference. But it's fair to say there's more talking points in the Eastern Conference than there is the Western Conference. Some of the key players that you need to know about. Thomas Muller, he's been absolutely outstanding this year. He scored a brace against Toronto. He's got 11 goals in 17 appearances for the club. Nashville's Sam Surridge, when he's fit, he scores goals. He's been very, very injured this season. He has scored a lot of goals, though, when he has been. His last season's Golden Boot winner, where he got 25 goals last year. Lionel Messi, just what an outstanding footballer. We don't need to say much on him. He's still, at the age of 38, 39, he's still unbelievable to watch him glide past defenders. And I understand the defending is not great, but to still score the goals, to still provide the assists that he does, to play the way that he does, he's unbelievable. 12 goals in 13 appearances, and his assists have been incredible as well. There's also other players that maybe you've not heard of. Preston Judd, playing for San Jose Earthquakes. He's got 11 goals so far this season. He's contributed when Timo Werner has been in and out of the side because due to injury. Sapikas, another really excited 20-year-old player. 2 goals and 7 assists this season so far for Tsimikas. And the other players, Sebastian Berhalter. His dad currently is the manager of Chicago Fire, which is just crazy. But Seb Berhalter, he's got 6 goals. He's got 4 assists, and that's all from midfield. He's an incredibly high-octane midfielder. Hopefully we get to see him for US men's national team in the World Cup. We've also got Diego Rossi, for the Columbus Crew. I've loved him, ever since I've known him from LAFC. Tried to make it out in Europe, but didn't quite happen for him in the Turkish league. But what an incredible player he is. Top goal scorer for the Crew. Underperforming side, but still finding a way to get his goals. Samir Gozo, 19 years of age. He's a real exciting talent in America. They're really excited because he's homegrown. They really want him as part of the US men's national team. But by the time this comes out, there's rumours that potentially he isn't in Pochettino's side. And another player who potentially isn't in Pochettino's side is one of the players I think so exciting to watch. Is Diego Luna. And Diego Luna, he scored 4 goals and got 3 assists, but he's just a fantastic player, such a game changer. I think with a lot of these players, potentially could represent USA in the men's national team. A lot of them, due to the league they're playing in and maybe the defenders they're facing are being overlooked. But I think form is massive to take into a tournament. And yeah, look at all the players who are playing the European leagues. But if you can have a Gozo, a Luna, who are so hungry, who are not experienced those massive, massive games, I think there's so much potential here for US men's national team. But that is the review of the first half of the MLS season.